afternoon. We have been having some very interesting discussions on the stage, mainly on leadership. And if I were to say the last discussion we had with Mr. Barrett, the way he talked about possibility, purpose, and passion was quite interesting. We want to continue this,
In the
look
begin,
at it in the context of the organization and how do we groom leaders. My name is Sarthak Rai Chaudhary. I run a boutique consulting firm in the area of organization change and transformation, helping a lot of founder companies to scale up. I don't think I will be able to do justice to such a distinguished panelist by introducing themselves, and I would rather have them introduce the kind of work they have been doing because each one brings in something very unique to this discussion. So let's start with you, Irene.
My name is Irene Riyadh, and professionally, I'm an executive holistic depth coach, and I run a company that supports senior top leaders, bridging personal and legacy leadership growth.
Thanks. Gerard?
I'm Gerard Hargreaves, and I'm an international business coach. I've had a background in over 30 years of leadership training from the military to public sector to private sector, and now I specialize in helping people transition from being managers to being leaders. And when I'm not in business, I'm an elected politician in London. So I also deal with another type of leadership there.
That's fantastic.
My name is Jerome Kashlin. I'm a partner with Leadership Management International, which has trained over 2 million leaders around the world in the last 40, 50 years. I'm also the CEO of the Swiss Who is Who, which gathers 1,500 leaders in the field of politics, business, economics, culture, and philanthropy. And in a previous life, I've been a journalist and a war reporter. So when a CEO comes and say, we have an emergency, I put that in perspective.
So my name is Mustafa Al-Hadidi. I've been in the HR for the past 22 years, specialized mostly in transforming companies from family business into a corporate with the structure and everything. Currently, I'm one of the founders in Kaus, which is tackling the hiring and the recruitment problem in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. I'm Rajneesh. I see myself as a global leader with 30 years experience. I've led very large teams, over 10,000 people around the world. And nowadays, in fact, for the last 10 years, I've switched gears, given up my CEO hat and started wearing the consulting hat, and I teach. So my mission is helping build the next 100 CEOs for the corporate world.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you have teachers, you have CEOs, ex-CEOs, you have HR folks, you have politicians, and you have war reporters in the panel. So that's what we are going to talk about today. So on this topic of building leaders for succession, succession planning is something that, with all the right intent, somehow organizations have yet to crack the code. There must be something fundamentally not right in the approach organizations are taking in order to identify and then groom the right leaders. So I wonder, what would those be? Why is it becoming such an enigma for leaders across industries and across ages? Gerard, you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you. They're really interesting questions, isn't it? Because it's something that's on every leader's agenda: succession planning. But it really is quite difficult, isn't it? The pace of change in business nowadays is growing, and what makes great leaders today will not necessarily be what makes great leaders tomorrow. And therefore, succession planning has to start with, where is this organization going to be in 5 years, in 10 years' time? Succession planning has to be tied into the strategy of the business. What sort of leaders are we going to need in 5 years' time? What sort of leaders are we going to need in 10 years' time or whatever? And unless we start with that, we're never going to be able to move forward on it. I also think people's careers are changing, aren't they? Gone are the days when somebody joined an organization and they stayed with it for life. People are changing careers much more. They're changing industries much more. So that makes succession planning much more difficult in itself. I'm a politician, I don't need a microphone. Now I'm more audible, am I? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm not going to repeat all of that because I think you heard most of it. But I think the landscape is changing and businesses need to change the way they think about succession planning.
Fantastic. So you're talking about the time dimension and how things are changing. Yeah, Rajin.
Maybe let me be a little provocative to get the panel going. I've been a CEO myself, and I've coached quite a lot of CEOs today in the market and around the world. Hey, this is not an India problem. I see we are all chasing our own tails. I see we are just worried about the next quarter results. That's it. It is a very short-term perspective that we have. Am I getting my bonus? Because my bonus is determined only by the next quarter result. Nobody is looking into the horizon, into the long-term piece. And succession planning, sure, I've got to make the company run 100 years. I may contribute 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but nobody's thinking of that 100-year or any long-term perspective.
Absolutely. I just hold that thought. We'll bring that up subsequently also. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be also a bit provocative here. In any organizations, you have 10% of positive actors, 80% of spectators, and 10% of negative actors. The challenge is, how do you make these growing number of spectators becoming positive leaders and positive actors? It's a great challenge. You know that 70% of companies are experiencing difficulties and leadership gap in their succession planning. So it's a major, major issue. And I think you need to focus on a very basic thing, which is, are you able to identify the future leaders who have the intention to change their behaviors and their habits? It's based on, you've heard about the intentional change theory, the ICT of Richard Boyatzis. If you don't have the intention deeply rooted inside yourself to change your habits, to change your behaviors, it's a waste of time to try to move you on. So if you have the intention, the desire to develop your leadership skills and to embark yourself in a journey, which is to try to become a smarter, a global, a more complete leader or transformational leader, then I think you're on the right track. But it's based on your intention.
Yeah, Mustafa.
Yeah, I agree with you, but then there is a part in the succession. Succession planning is a long-term plan. I could put someone in the program who could resign from the company, who could leave. What we really miss in the companies is what I like to call the bus theory. The bus theory is very basic, that an employee is a CFO, he's the core technical guy, or he's the know-how guy. He comes in the morning, he gets hit by a bus. What am I going to do as a company? Am I going to shut down? What is my contingency plan for it? That you have to have in the company. It's like having your fire escape plan. You don't do the fire escape plan after the full place catches on fire, right? We're like, hey, we need to write down the documents, who's going to be doing what. So that also has to be embedded into the succession planning. Identify who is the most risk person. Identify what could go wrong when he gets hit by a bus. I'm not saying that he should get hit by a bus, but it happens. Right?
Yeah, so very interesting. You talked about, do I have the successor ready for tomorrow? And Jared is talking about, do I start planning for a successor 10 years, imagining what the business will be like? Now that brings me to the next question, Irene. If you were to, so how do we actually develop leaders? And picking up from what you heard, what kind of leaders do we need as successors?
Definitely a golden question. And I'll piggyback off of the intention. So picking the leader who has the intention is an essential step. And then I would add readiness. So how do we get them ready? They may have the intention, but they might think it's a group of skills that they need to learn, but that's not enough. So to get them ready, there is skill sets that are changing. If we're looking at what's their next level, is it vertical succession, horizontal succession? What is the intention of their career? But skills and mindsets, I think, are not enough anymore. We need to look at who they are in terms of their identity. Do they have the capacity to expand in defining who they are? And that might seem like a concept, but once we start to look at what it means identifying beliefs of what they are capable of, capacity of withholding pressure. It might include EI, it might include other beliefs about the world, about themselves, about what's possible. But I would say readiness, yes, there's skill set and mindset, but we got to look at identity, who they think they are, where can they grow, how can they grow, capacity under pressure. And I would add this relational intelligence, because as you grow higher, you're being groomed into C-suite. It's no longer tactical or even strategy. You might have the best strategy, but if you're working from the same concept of who I am, your relations will derail. So it becomes influence, impact, and you have to work with complexity and welcome it. So these are the readiness, I would say, capacity under pressure and uncertainty, your identity expanding, you can redefine who you are becoming, and that relational intelligence.
So, Irene, you brought in a very interesting thing that when you are grooming successors for at least the C-suite, it is no longer about the skills and capabilities of a good manager, what they have shown, but it almost like, you're changing tracks and you're looking at something completely different for them. And that's why many pass the test and many don't. Rajnish, your views on this particular one?
Absolutely on the same line. I'll give you an example. Actually, nothing illustrates better than actual case studies and actual examples. So I was taken on as a consultant by a very relatively old gentleman, 74, 75 years of age, running his own business, pretty decent sized business, about 200 staff, professional staff, and so on and so forth. And he called me in saying, Rajnish, let's talk a little about succession planning. I'm getting old myself. And this is a family run business. So yeah, I want to do some succession planning. I said, wonderful, that's the way it should be. 2 months down the road, and we started off with the exercise, the typical 9-box structure and mapping the potential and performance and figuring out who are the top 20, 30 leaders that you can groom and develop. So we started off on that exercise, and maybe typical founder, CEO, he's so aggressive, he went on to the next idea. And he says, Rajnish, let's leave this for the moment. Let's generate more revenue. We want to do more revenue and more revenue. Okay, fine, you're the boss, you're the customer, if that's what you're asking. So we left this discussion aside. Now, sad story, about 15 days later, he had a stroke. And he was bedridden. He never came back to office actually. And he passed away after about a month or so. And the entire family was in a chaos. Everybody was wanting to either sell off the company or wanting to be the next CEO and so on and so forth. Lack of succession planning. Actually, that's a beautiful example on saying while short-term revenues and get growth, etc., is important, but to the point of the bus theory, yeah, the individual got hit by a natural bus, and can't help it. All of us are bubbles. So making sure that you go through with those basic, the tools are there. It's the intent, like Irene also pointed out. It's the intention.
So, Mustafa, when you're looking for a successor, and keeping in mind the fact that there is a short-term requirement and there's a long-term orientation required, we talked about identity, and you also talked about it. This example talks about immediate requirements. How do you balance all these things, and what do you look for in a potential successor before you start the process of grooming?
See, it's a very, very tricky situation. It has to be played well. There are so many factors that go into it. First factor is, what is your company size? What is the growth level? If you are a company, software and AI, you're growing very fast, too fast, you can't keep up. If you're a sustainable business, you're growing steadily. So it's not about just who to select, what are the qualities. It's what do I expect from him. If I'm the company CEO, if I'm the company owner, or if it's a family business like what you said, the next leader, what do I want him to do for the company? That's the first thing that you have to ask yourself. You could be wanting a manager, but you're saying, no, I need a leader. So he ends up being a manager, managing the company, but he's not actually leading the business. Know what you expect from him. See the people that you have. What are their capabilities? Where can you invest in them? And do they have emotion intelligence or not? It's like what you said, they're transitioning from a journey to operational, strategic to a C-level. It's a full different ball game, different views, everything is totally different. So will you be able to lead them in that journey, or just like bring them, hi, you are the new leader of the company, this is the company, these are all the employees, this is the books, I want sales growth, I want to expand, I want to be the next NSA. That doesn't work out.
Yeah, Jerome, in your experience, what should we look for when we try and identify our potential success?
I think in the word succession, you have success. And how do we define success? And I think success is a progressive realization of worthwhile, predetermined, personal goals that can become collective. So once you have defined this success, how do you create and build, the future leaders of the company? At Leadership Management International, we have a clear 4 steps way to building leadership. The first one is to focus on your personal productivity. What are you really able to deliver as a professional? The second is your personal leadership. What are your values? Are you aligned with your purpose? The third is the motivational leadership. Are you able to build great teams and to be an inspirational leader? And the last step is the strategic leadership. We have a long-term vision. So it's a 4 steps, a very clear process. And to go through that process, to develop your leadership skills, of course, you need courage, you need determination, and you need also humility. And I will just end up with this. You've read probably the level 5 type of leaders defined by Jim Collins in the Harvard Business Review. And he says that you have 3, these high level of leaders like Angela Merkel, like Nelson Mandela or Kofi Annan. They have 3 very specific characteristics. The first is the long-term vision. The second is the determination. And the third is humility. And we don't ask all the leaders to be at that level of leadership, but at least it's a great reference and great benchmark.
Fantastic. Very good insights you brought in. Gerard, your views on this? What do you look for in a successor?
I think it's that age-old looking difference between a manager and a leader, and you're looking for people who can make that transition from being a manager to being a leader. The people who can move from working in the business to working on the business. And we know, we've met, don't we? We've worked for them, loads of people who have leadership titles, great titles. They're not leaders, they're just glorified managers. Because what they've never made upstairs, in their hearts, intellectually, they've never made that transition from in to on the business. We also often promote people, don't we, on the basis of how good they are now, not how good they will be in a new role. So we need to have tools, we need to have techniques that are not just assessing people where they are today, but how are they going to be able to make that transition into that leadership role. And it starts with mindset, but goes on much further than that, as Irene was saying. So I think it's a real challenge. It is a real challenge. And it is about, how do I make that transition from being somebody who's good at working in the business to being someone who's good at working on the business?
Very well put. From being good in the business to being doing on the business. Irene, in your experience, how do people make this transition? What does it take to make this transition from a manager to a leader, from in the business to on the business?
I come back to their perception of who they are. Because when you're in the business, you're focused on doing yourself. You are maybe doing professionally the work, tactical, even strategic, but you're kind of in it. You're not zooming out, managing others. And zooming out is not just thinking bigger or long vision. From an identity perspective, You actually see yourself as a steward. You are the mentor, if we give it another name. So helping them on the journey is helping them deconstruct who they have been that has brought them success until now, because they have been successful. Let's not remove that. But then moving forward, it's like what got you here won't get you there. So let's honor the success, their knowledge, their skill, and all their credibility and all that. But now what's going to get you further requires a new definition of success, requires what does it mean to work on the business. So stepping out, being a business leader, although they are leading a certain function, what does that mean? So it is a new perspective of who they are. And I think we miss this whole thread of who you are becoming along this journey of succession, which could be a leadership program of 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. We focus so heavily on skill set, and, we need that, and mindset, growth mindset, fixed mindset, all we need it. But let's add a third component. Who are you becoming? Beliefs, values that are changing, your perception of how you fit in. And there's always this fit for purpose. I would say be full in purpose. Don't try to fit in any box. Be full. Discover fully all what you're capable of.
So I thought of another example, as this conversation was happening. I coach a lot of senior leaders, C-level. So one of the CFOs, large multinational companies, so it's a different example, different scale. So this guy had joined the company about 3 months or 4 months ago, and the CEO offered me this consulting role to say, I think he needs a little grooming and getting into already about 20 years plus 25 years or so of experience. So senior guy. And so I asked him a question, a very, like in the morning also we spoke about bloody good questions. So I asked him a question saying, why do you think your boss or the CEO really hired you? And he says, I've got to manage I'm responsible for the upkeep of the accounts, and I've got to make sure that the trial balance and the balance sheets are all prim and proper and auditable records, etc., etc. And I said, no, that's not the case. And of course, he was a little taken aback. He didn't quite like my response. He's saying, what do you mean? You're telling me what my job is? And I said, no, your job, actually, the way I see it, and I've been a CEO level, so I know what's going on in his mind. Actually, I want you to be looking for 5 people in your organization who can manage the trial balance and balance sheets. If you can't do that, you're not doing a good job. If the company is not paying you such a heavy-duty salary to be able to maintain prim and proper accounts, that's somebody else's job. But it's your job to make sure that you develop 5 more guys who can do that job for you. I don't want you to be the firefighter. I want you to develop 5 more firefighters within your team. And if you can do that, I can tell you the CEO will be happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, John.
I just want to add, leadership is about also understanding that we live in a complex world. We very often hear that, we live in a complicated world. It's not the same thing at all. It's linked to complexity. What complexity means? It's the capacity to link very different topics to each other. You can work on a geostrategic issue and macroeconomic and microeconomic and climate change, and you are able to relate topics to the other and to each other. So we don't live in a complicated world. We live in a complex world. It's the theory of Edgar Morin, the French sociologist, and complex comes from the Latin word complexus, which means which is linked to. So I think it's a very important point. Leadership is about having the capacity to deal with complexity, because we've kept learning to separate issues, to disintegrate issues, and we have to relearn to aggregate and to combine very different topics together. And I think this is smart leadership.
Audience, please keep your questions ready. We will have a round where you can ask these questions. I can see a lot of people raising their hands and all. We'll come back to you. Uh, Mustafa, we talked about people making the transition, and whatever has been the success so far need not necessarily be the success mantra for the future. How easy it is or difficult is it to let go of something that has made me so successful? And why the hell should I let it go?
Exactly. This is one of the points I was going to talk about. One of the challenges that you face with succession planning is that the actual key decision maker, on the surface, he will tell you, I need to do succession planning. When you start working on it, execute it, I don't want succession planning. I want to remain in control. I want to remain in power. It's a human nature. He's been doing it for so many years. He will always condescend on whoever's below him. He's looking at their success based on his criteria, his evaluation set. So even in family businesses, you always see that, for example, the father's the owner, he's the one who built the company. He's never convinced with his children managing the company, no matter how much you invest in them. And then when it comes to the end of the day, I don't want that. They can't do it. Get for me an outsider, get for me someone from out. And then you'll fall into bigger problems like how you fell into it when he said, I don't want succession, I want to raise my revenue and all that. So you have to be fully honest with yourself regarding this. Do I really have the ability to change my mindset into letting go of so many things I was doing? And would I trust the person who's going to be doing it? Or would I be micromanaging him day to day? I've seen it, especially in one of the companies in Saudi Arabia. It's a family business. They brought C-level people, and it ended up that the board was micromanaging them, asking them every 2 to 3 days, progress reports. What did you do this? How did you complete this? They took them down from the bird eye view to the daily operational level. They ended up with supervisors taking a salary of C-levels. Company starting to go bankrupt. So it's hard.
So correctly put, you're almost asking somebody that, okay, create a plan so that you become redundant. And who would like to do that? Get somebody in that. And absolutely, that's usually the problem, and I just don't want to let go. That's human nature. And whatever I have grown, I have made this function, I have made this company, etc. So dear to me, you get emotionally attached to it, and then you ask them, let go. Oh my God. So difficult. Yeah, Gerard.
Thank you. And it's also about people who've worked in a comfort zone. We're familiar with this territory, know what it's like, it's easy to do. If I hear a problem over the other side of the office, I can charge over on my white horse, sort it out, and life's good. I can tick things off my to-do list today. And that's a mindset that has to change. But also the company needs to recognize and reward leadership and not doing. I did a lot of work for a very famous department store in London, and I was working with the heads of the department. Women's wear, men's wear, beauty, homeware. And these were mega businesses in their own way. And I was asked to go in and help the heads of those departments. So women's wear would be a 500-600 million pound business on its own. To be more strategic, to think more, to actually lead rather than manage. But at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if the sales figures went up for that day, the chief executive was on the phone to each other, like, get on the sales floor. Why are the sales figures not doing this? Get on there. So the business has to respect leadership, and it has to respect what leaders do, in addition to, of course, respecting what managers do. So it's a mindset both ways, isn't it? It's a mindset for the individual, and it's a mindset for the business. Sorry.
Oh, beautifully. I think that's what Rajneesh also said, that at the end of the day, it's the revenue, like quarterly results. That's what you mind. You build your leaders when everything is going hunky-dory, but not at the cost of the results. Okay, I know this can go on. Let me take a few questions from the audience. Yes. Yeah, sure. Can we have a...
It's a chain reaction. It's a chain reaction that if I elevate one manager to a vice president, I need an assistant manager to fill up the manager's position. So I guess it starts from the top. Typically in large organizations, wherever I've done succession planning, it always starts from who are the top 50 guys or top 100 guys in the organization, and do the 9-box structure. I'm sure you're familiar. and make sure that and then go one step down, because then that chain reaction will be involved.
Yeah. I worked in an organization where it was very clear that if you want to move up, the first criteria is prove that who will take your role. If that is not ready, you cannot move up. It's too bad, even if you are the best performers, if you are ready for it. Only when you prove to us that you have got a successor ready, do you move up. And that is a way, then there's what we don't do in succession planning is we tell them you create your successors, but we never say what will happen to you. So there's the what's in it for me is never answered, but you are told as part of a being leader, manager, you have to create success. The other thing, the loop needs to get closed. Only then the ball starts rolling.
Can I just add, to add to your question, sometimes when the hierarchy does not allow somebody to be there, there's always the cross succession planning. So you're still grooming people, but from a different department. And that's actually encouraged so people don't think it's only a vertical growth.
Because there's always the dynamics of business, not you have mergers, you have acquisitions, and what was a clear career path a year ago has now completely been knocked sideways. So I think one needs that flexibility, and one needs constantly to find new challenges for people if that succession hasn't just happened the way we had it planned.
Great. There was one more question here, one at the back, yeah? You wanted to ask a question? You wanted to ask a question? Okay, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely question. Lovely. Yeah.
I guess I can share my own experience because I do quite a lot of these things. So typically, I know it is more nebulous, and performance is very easily measurable. Potential is not. And also, then to apply that same criteria, whatever you use, then consistently across the organization, is the other toughie. So I've described, and I guess, for the organizations that I'm dealing with, we followed it successfully. Is potential means the fellow is good enough for at least 2 more promotions in the next 3 to 5 years. So if you feel that this person has reached your level of incompetence, skip it. He may be the best performer, but you don't want to move him or her. But the flip side, if you feel that this fellow is good for at least 2 more promotions in the next 3 to 5 years, then go ahead, lay some bets on him.
Yeah.
And I could add some of the elements to look at and you would start to measure is their engagement. So how engaged are they, not just in their department, but holistically with other departments. So you encourage cross-department engagement. Career ambition, have they spoken about their growth? Because if they haven't, then there's a question mark. And the third would be around emotional maturity or emotional intelligence or emotional regulation. There's many, you could see which one you'd like to measure. But I would say outside of those 3, there are plenty, but those 3 could help you start to see, okay, where is that potential and how much can we further develop that person?
Also, one more criteria that I've used, I know, is especially at the top, at the CXO level, is flexibility. Is this person a specialist, therefore can only grow so much, versus this guy is a potential CEO of the future?
Yeah, Jared.
And really, just when we're looking at potential, we're looking at that difference between a manager's role, which is largely task-driven, budgets, targets, project plans, to a leadership role, and leadership is largely about behaviors. So when we're looking at potential, we're looking at assessing behaviors and what are the potential behaviors. But one just last thing, I remember years ago when I was a new leader, really getting frustrated with someone in my team. I wanted to grow them, I wanted to develop them, but it wasn't happening. So I went to my boss, poured out my heart, and my boss just looked at me and said, Gerard, just remember, you cannot put in what God has left out. And that for me was a learning. We can try, can't we? We can really develop and grow, but sometimes it's just not for that person. And,
Be-
and the realization of that is a good one.
just to add on that, behavior and performance are very key. And, you can also use the methodology of the 3 E's. The energy which one leader has on a day-to-day basis, day in, day out. Then energize, the capacity to motivate. And this is all related to emotional intelligence, of course. And the third E is execute, the capacity to perform, of course, because at the end of the day, we need to have results every quarter. So the 3 E, I think, is also a good methodology to observe, analyze the capacity of a smart or a global leader.
It's like performance is the passport and potential is the visa. For you to travel, you definitely need the passport, and on top of that you need the visa, right? So it's not really not either or kind of. Yeah, there's a question out there. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll tell you something. The challenge that you always face with the technical people, that they are not human friendly. These kind of people are always looking at code, looking at software, looking at bugs, network, etc., all these kind of things. But they have to know that if they want to progress in their career, reach a CXO level, they have to start slowly moving into being a more of a people's person. I had that challenge when I was working in the IT security field. I worked for 8 years. I reached to a stage where I hate telling people good morning. Telling a person good morning was too much of a drama for me. People are like, used to look at them that people are variables. You cannot predict their actions. You cannot predict what you're going to do. Now, for me to get out of that, I took a humongous leap. I resigned from the IT security field, joined the airlines in the check-in counter desk, where you're meeting all the problems, all the frustration. You're meeting people on a daily level. So they have to know and have the mindset that we need to transition. It's not just technical. Technicality, it can be done. AI is helping in a lot of things. If you are going to be doing a software development without using AI, it could take you 6 months, 1 year, depending on the project. Now we can do it in half that span. So with the progress that we are facing, with the challenges, with the growth, it's not just about being technically good. You have to have the mindset that I need to transition to be more in a people perspective, look at the business perspective, and start slowly moving out of pure code, not dealing with people, saying hello to the printers, saying hello to everything that is non-human. That's a challenge.
Let me also tell you, I don't know any of these people personally, but from whatever I've read in literature, while they might show off different kind of a face, the way they deal with their team members is very different. They are very empathetic with their team members, the immediate people, etc. They do show those leadership skills. Mark Zuckerberg definitely does. I know for certain. Google, they definitely have it. Tim Cook does it, etc. While they might show a facade, we are techies and etc. like that, but when it comes to dealing with their people, they do show those characteristics.
Let me just add one thing. You may remember that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Steve Jobs spent half a year on the brand positioning of Apple. And he ended up with this brand promise, this tagline, think different, which is still the brand promise of Apple. So he had to propose a vision, a purpose, which would make customers and clients and people dream. So he had both, of course, a focus on IT and technology and innovation, but also a focus on emotional intelligence. What Apple is all about. We bring people who think different. So that's a good example of bringing both worlds together.
So that brings us to the end of the session. We had a lot of fun in discussing this. I hope you took away something from this particular session about how do you actually identify successors and how do you actually groom successors and what kind of challenges one faces while doing that. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.